Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Outside the Ropes. I'm Tom Hannifan, joined by the #1 contender to the Impact World Championship, Alex Shelley. You will get your shot at the Impact World Champion, Steve Maclin, this Friday night at Against All Odds in Columbus, Ohio, live on Impact Plus, Fight TV, and YouTube for our Ultimate Insiders. You win the six-way match at Under Siege. Now you've got another shot at the Impact World Championship in a little bit less than a year's time. And let's not forget what happened at Emergence last year. That was your first ever shot at the Impact World title. How does it feel that it's come back around?
Totally different, right? Because the champion's not the same, the circumstances aren't the same, my life's not the same, and I'm not the same person. So I felt ready then, to be totally honest with you. I just got beat by the best. Josh Alexander was the best. He's not the champion anymore, Steve Maclin is. But I've got a grievance with that. I truly, truly believe that I'm the top wrestler in the world right now, and I'm gonna prove it.
Now, the last time you were on here, it was the Motor City Machine Guns, and we were talking about Kushida's Impact World title shot. He had the vacant title, was determined at Rebellion. Steve Maclin defeated Kushida. I asked you in that interview if what Kushida was doing had stirred up anything in your mind in regards to the Impact World title. You said no, and then a few weeks later, you said, you know what? I want to go after the Impact World title, as Chris Sabin said, I want to go after the X Division title.
Right. I fully believe that Kushida is one of the top wrestlers in the world. And I think that's something that's undulating. I don't think that's static. I don't think somebody's the top wrestler one day and then that is maintained throughout the course of a calendar year. That's not how it works. You have to struggle to stay on top. But Kushi has all the potential to do anything he wants in wrestling, including win the Impact World Championship. But he got a shot, and he lost. And now it's time for somebody else to make a challenge. And that's me. And it just so happens that, yeah, my Japanese brother, my best friend, was the previous challenger, and then PCO lost. Somebody else has to step up to the plate. I'm gonna step up and I'm gonna hit a home run.
But you told me that night you had no interest in the Impact World Championship.
At the time, my focus was elsewhere, right?
Fair.
And you can only dip into so many buckets at one time before you're just distracted, right? You're spreading yourself too thin. So I focus on one thing at a time, and right now, it's Maclin.
What was astonishing to all of us at Emergence is that you'd never gotten an Impact World title shot in all your years in Impact Wrestling. And I think back to your early days, you were often called an Impact Original. I remember the Shelley camp. I remember Paparazzi Productions. I remember the Motor City Machine Guns forming, lighting things up, revolutionizing tag team wrestling. Looking back on those early years, do you felt like you were ready for a world title opportunity? Or did it take this much time for Alex Shelley to be ready for that?
I think being naive is a strength in certain instances. And when you're in your early 20s, you don't think about anything further down the line. Can we agree on that?
Yeah,
I'm sure you're a
absolutely.
different person now than when you were 23, right? When I was in Paparazzi Productions, I was too focused on winning the PCS and learning from my big buddy Kevin Nash. When we first started the Machine Guns, it was a struggle because nobody wanted us as a team, not even in this company. We had to fight for every inch. Going forward, I had chances at the X Division title, and I did my best, and I secured that once. And then life took over, right? And I go to these different companies. I go to CMLL, and I go to New Japan, and I wrestle in Europe against legends like Robbie Brookside, and I go back to college, I go back to university, because I want to try all these different things in life. And it took me a long time, if I'm being honest, to realize that I probably wasn't a specialist. I was a jack of all trades. And that's something that's hard to digest when you look at your peers and they focused on one thing, one goal, and they just never let that go, right? They just kept their head down. They burrowed towards it and they got it. Whereas with me, it was, this plan's not working, therefore I'm going to try something else. I'm not gonna complain about it, but I'm gonna deviate from the course. This is the first time, professionally speaking, that I truly feel like everything's lined up. Everything's where it needs to be, and I'm who I am. And that person is a world champion, and I can prove it.
You talked about being a specialist, and I think that's such a good thing to dive into because tag team competitors often just get labeled as such.
Sure.
And your partner, Chris Sabin, won the Impact World Championship back in 2013. So a lot of people have looked at you. It's like, hey, when are you going to have your opportunity? When are you going to climb the mountain?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you got stuck in that for a long time? That's like, oh, he's just a tag team guy.
Not necessarily. I mean, when Saban won his world championship in 2013, I went to the finals of the Super Juniors that year against Prince Devitt. I was doing things my way. It just didn't jive with, quite frankly, good luck in a lot of instances, okay? I just wasn't in the right place at the right time or the right person at the right time. And I worked really, really, really hard to develop this skill set with all these different tools. And tag team wrestling is one of them, sure, but I'm a submission specialist. I can wrestle any style, and I've done that successfully all across the globe. It's just time to put all the pieces together, right? It's time to put all the clay into a ball and make a beautiful sculpture, and that's me with the World Championship, right? That's what I think transitions me from being a generalist now to a specialist. There's a utilization of all these different resources at my disposal.
You talked about being in the right place, maybe at the wrong time.
Right.
I remember being backstage for the night you popped up in WWE alongside Kushida. That was such a cool moment. And then the pandemic comes, the whole world changes. From a mental health standpoint, being in the right place at the wrong time at several different points in your career, unfortunately, how did you push through that?
The time period that you're talking about, that was 2020, early 2020. And I had gone through so many things in life at that point. I truly felt like I had lived so many different lives. And I put in a lot of work, mentally and physically, to become a better person, have better perspectives and better outlooks. And I almost felt bad when that pandemic hit as far as how well I dealt with it. Part of that was also because I was working in patient care. I was taking care of other people. And I think when you connect with another human being, that does tend to take away some of your own anxieties. At the same time, it was just another footnote in my career. Like, this was probably going to happen. All signs were pointing towards go, and then an act of God. Since I started wrestling, oh man, like global pandemic, recession, favoritism by management towards other people, not myself, no matter how hard I work. Having a tag team partner that truly, I think we reinvented tag team wrestling, became the best on the planet. Injury to him, injury to me. Going to New Japan Pro Wrestling as the company was ticking up, but then leaving to pursue academia before I could have reached my apex there. I mean, there's just so many what ifs. And if I really look back on all these things, I drive myself crazy. So I just focus on what I have right now. What I have right now is an Impact World Championship match. And if I don't focus on that, then I can't possibly beat Steve Maclin. This guy just bled buckets. His plasma is still in London, Ontario. He's a machine, he's an animal. I've got to bring everything I've got, everything I've learned in the past 20 years, everything at my disposal, and just unleash on it.
We've talked about the way people have perceived you over the years. What do you think has been the ill-conceived perception of Steve Maclin?
If you want to talk about like an overarching view of Steve Maclin, you mentioned me coming to WWE. You mentioned me in NXT. And I had a few matches before I was on TV. The Time Splitters wrestled Maclin multiple times. We beat him. We beat him. At that point, I could see potential in him for sure. I thought, man, this guy could be really, really good. But tag team wrestling is very different, right? You're not going to beat the Time Splitters. You're just not going to, unless you've been a team for years who have traveled the globe. They weren't. But I'm able to recognize talent on a pretty sublime level, and it was definitely there. So I come back to Impact, and this guy's here. And about a year ago, I beat him. I think people forget that, but I beat him. Clean as a sheet, right in the middle of the ring with a shell shock. Even then, I thought, oh my God, he's leveled up. Like, he's stronger and he's faster and he's meaner, right? And this is a difference of a couple years, but I thought, if this continues, then he's going to eventually become a world champion. And sure as shit, man, he was. So he just kept going. So he's meaner and stronger. And then it just got cruel. Then it just got sadistic to a point. Like, what he's doing now has nothing to do with pro wrestling. I am pro wrestling. That's violence. That doesn't belong in my ring. So when I take that world championship from him, you better believe you're not going to see any of that. But I have to take it from him first. And that's a big, big mountain to climb.
You talked about that brutal bloody Impact World title, no disqualifications match at Under Siege.
Right.
Maclin retaining the title against PCO, and then the heinous things that he and Bully Ray did to Scott D'Amore after the fact. I know that's very personal with you, with Scott.
1,000,000%. It's like, dude, this guy gave you a job, right? Like, Impact would not be what it is today, and believe me, it's much better than it's ever been without Scott D'Amore. So you're gonna bite the hand that feeds you? Nay, you're gonna chop the hand off that feeds you? It's like, come on, man. What do you gain by doing this? Honestly, like, what do you gain? You gain nothing. All you end up doing is pissing people off, namely me. So if Scott can't take it out, not on my way.
I know, on top of that, Scott helped train you once upon a time. So you're telling me there's no emotional aspect in this?
Of course there is.
Are you
Of
gonna,
course.
now, how do you prevent yourself from becoming too emotional at Against All Odds when the Impact World title's on the line?
You say it like I shouldn't become too emotional. There's a balance to be had, right, between action and emotion. I think when people use their emotions, you look at the highest level athletes, because this is still a sport. Despite what he did, which there was nothing sporting about it, this is still a sport. Pro wrestling is still a sport. Athletes can tap into their emotions and unlock potential. That's what I plan on doing. And if it happens to result in violence, so be it.
This Friday night at Against All Odds in Columbus, Ohio, you get another shot at the Impact World title. Why is this Friday night the night that Alex Shelley climbs the mountain and becomes the Impact World Champion?
This Friday night, I represent not just myself, not just the history of Impact Wrestling, I represent an entire generation. Our generation, right? Our generation that had to pay off student loans. We had to eat shit for years. We had to struggle through recessions. We had to go through pandemics. But this generation persevered. I persevered for 2 decades in pro wrestling, and I reinvented the wheel. I forced it to be reinvented. Now I'm gonna force that world championship into my hands.